When Injustice Gods Among Us dropped back in 2013, it was a pretty standard fighting game. It had a good amount of characters to play as, a lot of combos to learn, a story mode, but at the same time, they also released a mobile version, and instead of trying to copy the console game, they accidentally ended up building something completely different. A really weird touch-based card game that somehow ended up being just as popular, if not more popular than the console games. I know a lot of people who've played these versions and never touched the console ones ever, so why and how did this even happen? So there was a time when console games were getting adapted to mobile, when people thought that mobile was gonna replace console gaming, and these games were an example of that change of mindset. Except they did something a little different. You see, instead of being a real-time fighting game like the console versions, the mobile did a little different thing, making it a card-based 3 versus 3 battle. Unlike traditional fighting games, you had to unlock every character. Some of them were rarer than others, bronze, silver, and gold being the different rarities. You could also level them up and promote them with new items. And despite how simpler the gameplay was, every character still had unique moves and attacks. But still, there was so much changes to these games that it almost felt like a different genre at times. And it surprisingly did work. By 2015, the game had over 50 million players, and a lot of them still play the game to this day. I know a lot more play this game than the console ones, because those are basically dead. So why did this weird cross-hybrid game even work in the first place? Well, first, accessibility. Mobile games will always have this over console games because, let's be real, everyone has a phone, and everyone could recognize these iconic DC characters, and it's free. So why not try it out? Another reason why these games blew up was because they were so addictive. Unlocking characters like Batman, Flash, or even exclusive versions pulled people in hard. This was basically gacha games before gacha games were a thing, or at least before they were as popular as they are now. And lastly, it got constant updates. Mobile games are easier to add new content to than console games, so they were constantly adding new content to this game almost like every month. I think they still do, matter of fact. And the console games in comparison barely get any updates. As I said earlier, I think those are like dead now, whereas these games always had some sort of event going on. So as much as these games weren't traditional fighting games, and maybe some Injustice fans wanted a more close adaptation to the console games, which is understandable, but this style did work. It was addictive and people were drawn in. Comparing it to most other console mobile adaptations, they tried to force the console controls on the tiny ass mobile screen, and most times it just ends up feeling clustered and unplayable. Like, okay, I can eventually get used to digital buttons and a digital joystick, but if you expect me to sit down and play a 5-hour long game like this, you're kinda crazy, I'm not gonna lie. They do have controller support, and some of the mobile controllers are actually really good, but it just doesn't hit the same. I would rather have a game specifically designed for touch controls than having to walk around with a controller all the time, which is exactly what these Injustice games did. They were built specifically for mobile controls. Attacks were done by swiping up or down on the screen, just tapping the screen. It felt much smoother than if they tried to have all the buttons just on the screen. I know some people who even say these mobile versions are better than the console ones, which I don't know if I'd say that, but they're definitely really good for what they are. However, they're not perfect. The games eventually got old. Some newer phones can't even play the first Injustice game. The updates did slow down, and in terms of graphics, they're decent, but they definitely didn't age that well, especially the first one. You can definitely tell this was a mobile game released in 2013. But overall, I still enjoyed these games. Growing up, I played these games because I didn't have the console versions, because I didn't have any consoles, because I was kinda broke. But yeah, for what they are, they're really good. Let me know if you've played these games before in your childhood, or if you still play these games, if they even work on your modern phones, or just how you feel about them in general.